So this is a video of a few last thoughts on my Bitter Woods playthrough. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for watching. I've had a lot of fun playing the game and making the videos. I hope you've had a lot of fun watching them. And I will be doing more playthrough videos, of course. I haven't decided what I'm going to do next, but I look forward to it. Yeah, this is a great game. Bitter Woods, some people say, is the best Battle of the Bulge game. It allows you to recreate the battle on a very playable scale. You know, you're not constantly tied down by rules minutia and things like that. And the game gives a great feel for the battle. Actually, this game, except for the Muse crossings, played out rather historically. Well, Bastogne fell, of course, but you know there were a few differences. But the ebb and flow of the game had a very historical feel to it, with the massive German onslaught, the long list of casualties for the Allies, and then the steadily increasing buildup of Allied forces to the eventual counterattack. And I love that about this game, that I feel like I'm fighting the Battle of the Bulge, you know, from a strategic level. And there are other great Battle of the Bulge games, Ardennes 44, Bastogne or Bust. The thing I love about, I think the reason I love Battle of the Bulge games is one of the very first games that I owned was Avalon Hill's Battle of the Bulge, their Smithsonian edition. I played that game to death when I was a teenager, and it was a lot of fun, and I still enjoy playing these Battle of the Bulge games. Well, I want to talk a little bit about both sides, highlight some things that I think they did right and some things I think they did wrong. And we'll start with the Germans. Their initial attack, I thought, was very good. They caused massive casualties to the Americans. The Americans lost 24 regiments in a hurry. And the Germans were able to cover a lot of ground very quickly. They were able to capture the fuel at Samry. They were able to capture Bastogne, and they were able to put the Americans in a position where they had to make a decision about standing in the field and trying to hold a line or retreating to the Meuse, which of course they decided to retreat. So that kind of pressure on the Americans to begin the game is very important, and I thought that the Germans did a great job of that. Another thing the Germans did good was they maintained a lot of divisional integrity. They kept most of their divisions together, which allows them to take advantage of some bonuses and things. And also, too, when they made their breakthrough into the middle of the map, they were able to mass 5 armored divisions there and really send the Americans into a free fall. Now, what did they do wrong? Because first of all, they lost the game, so they did some things wrong. First of all, the only way the Germans can win the game is to be across the Meuse. That's it. They either cross the Meuse and exit, or they are across the Meuse at the end of the game. So, in order to win the game, you have to be aggressive. Yeah, of course you do. It's the Battle of the Bulge. But, just like the Germans did in real life, in this game, they obviously overreached. They were able to get up to the Meuse. They were able to make a couple of different crossings. But the end result of that was a lot of losses. They really stretched out their lines, so it made it difficult for them to defend their flanks. And in the end, it was a disastrous decision. Maybe not to cross the Meuse, but there was a point there where they should have crossed back, where they should have come back across the river, pulled back towards Marseille, got into a good defensive position, and played for the draw. Because it was pretty obvious with the buildup of American and British forces, with the growing amount of American air power, with Patton arriving on the southern flank of the Bulge, it was pretty obvious that getting those units off the map was going to be very difficult for the Germans. They'd have to be very fortunate. So at that point, in retrospect, they should have retreated and played for the draw, which probably they would have achieved. But hell, I didn't want to do that. You want to try and win the game. So there you are. Also, too, the Germans made some pretty disastrous decisions in the south of Bastogne. Leaving Panzer Lehr out there to dry was really dumb, frankly. The moment it happened, that was a big uh-oh for me as the German player, because that's 4 mechanized regiments and your main defense of Bastogne. So to allow that division to be encircled and destroyed was a really big mistake. And I think, too, that in the northern part of the Bulge, I think the Germans, it's weird, they either should have pulled back sooner or held longer. Because when we pulled back from the Meuse, the Americans and the British flooded across the river, and from there on forward, it was hard to develop a defensive line with so many American forces. The terrain's just not good there. It's a lot of open ground, a lot of light woods. And so either they should have pulled back sooner before the Americans had built up, or they should have stayed at the Meuse and said, hey, we'll fight it out right here and use the bonuses of the defense for being across the river. But all in all, I mean, the game played out as a lot of Battle of the Bulge games play out, frankly, with the Germans making tremendous progress to begin the game, and then running into a wall of Allied resistance and their lines collapsing back in on themselves. So, I mean, I'd give the Germans a B. I give them a B for their progress in the game, or their how they played. So maybe if I play this again, we'll play a slightly different strategy with the Germans and see if they can go for that tactical victory or maybe even the draw. Okay, so the Allies. Let's first talk about what the Allies did wrong. Because to start the game, the Allies made some bad decisions, allowed some units to be cut off. Hell, they lost a whole division in Bastogne, and there was very little support there at Bastogne for the 10th Armored Division, and they lost the whole thing. And, they also made mistakes up near Elsenborn. They were not really very well prepared for Piper's breakout. And his ability to run roughshod through zones of control and back behind their lines was really devastating, and they weren't prepared for it. And they lost very good units. In fact, I'm looking in the counter tray right now. The 20-odd units that the Americans start the game with, they virtually lost them all. There's very little on the board from the start of the Allied position. And now because the Germans played well and aggressively, they were going to lose units. But I think it's kind of inexcusable to lose that many units. In fact, they lost 40 regiments and brigades in the game, which is about 13 divisions. And if the real Battle of the Bulge had that high a casualty amount, the loss of 13 divisions over the course of 2 weeks, I doubt very much that we would look back on the Battle of the Bulge as a great Allied success, because those casualty numbers are catastrophically high. But they also did some things that I think that their decision, after about 4 days, I forget which day it was on, I think it was on the 20th, their decision to retreat and pull back to the Meuse River, I think that was a really good decision. And I think that it kind of saved their bacon a little bit, because if they had tried to stay out there, who knows? They probably. Sorry, guys. Notice on my phone. If they had tried to stay out there, they would have just continued to take losses, and it would have made it that much more difficult for them to fend off the Germans when they finally reached the Meuse. So their decision to pull out and retreat at that point, their timing was almost perfect, actually, because they were able to continue to slow the Germans, but at the same time mount a serious defense back behind the river. And it probably was the deciding factor in the game, actually, the timing of that. It allowed them to keep more forces intact and put them in a position to counterattack later in the game. And then there's their counterattack. Their counterattack was good. I mean, they hit hard on all three sides, and the Germans just reeled after. They were like a boxer taking blows, and the Americans just kept hitting them and hitting them and hitting them. They cut off those 116th Panzer Division after it crossed the Meuse and completely destroyed it. Destroyed elements of the 9th SS, destroyed Piper on the other side of the Meuse, destroyed regiment after regiment as they moved south towards Marseille, and their counterattack was ruthless. Of course, they were aided. That combination of American air power, air dominance, with their massive amount of artillery is just brutal on the Germans. One thing, it's hard for the Germans to attack them because they constantly have artillery support and air support. And then when the Allies attack the Germans, they can easily turn those 3-to-1s into 4 and 5-to-1s because of all their support. And if the Germans had equal air power, and maybe if their artillery was a little bit more mobile, and that's where the American artillery gets them. It's not so much in the amount of it, it's in its mobility and its ability to fire twice in a turn, move around the battlefield, and which is just something the Germans just can't do. Their artillery has to be stationary, and hell, most of it was still horse-drawn, right? I mean, well, maybe not. But they were very slow in moving their artillery around the battlefield. And the Americans did a good job of taking advantage of those strengths and hitting the Germans really hard. So that's pretty much it. Those are my thoughts on the game. I thought it was a good game. It was very competitive. It did come down to the last couple of turns, which is a nice thing. With any good game, this playthrough gave me lots to think about for the next time that I consider playing the game. And I don't know that I will do a second playthrough of this. How many do you really need? But I do appreciate you guys and gals sitting through this playthrough, and if you have any thoughts on how the game was played on American or British or German strategy, please don't hesitate to leave some comments. And I think of every time I play a war game, it's a teachable moment, so you always are learning new things. And so please don't hesitate to comment. Well, anyways, again, thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you guys around. Bye.